collaboration. And I'm going to talk about, I have pulled another quote from someone I didn't really know who he was, so I looked him up. Roy E. Disney. And Roy says, oh, what does Roy say? It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. This is, well, first maybe I'll tell you who Roy is. Roy is the nephew of Walt, of course, and Walt and Roy's father founded the company, I guess, and Roy worked there. The idea of making decisions and you know that it's not hard to do that when you know what your values are is sort of the cornerstone of what I teach and what makes it magic, I think. So you know, values, interests, needs, I think I would use those interchangeably. So I teach a process called interest-based conflict resolution or interest-based mediation, whatever. And you know what interests are the needs, the values underneath the positions or positions we might take or the solutions that we might gravitate to or even insist upon. And they are what motivates us to do everything. So everything that we do, everything that we say, it's all us trying to get our interests or needs, or if you like, values, met in the best way that we know how. And oftentimes we don't really know the best way. And I think oftentimes we don't even know really what the needs or interests are that we are trying to meet. You know, I've said before in my lives earlier this week that I think we often know what are the needs right under the surface, but we don't necessarily know what some of those deeper needs or values are. And not that we not that we don't necessarily know what they are, but we don't even necessarily know how to look for them or that we should even be looking for them. And so that's a big piece of what I teach. And as I said, it's the cornerstone of the process that I use as a mediator, that I use when I facilitate conflict solving as well as any kind of planning and decision making. The process that I use for conflict solving is the same process that I use for collaboration and problem solving and decision making, and it really is very much focused on these values that Roy is talking about. So how do you find out what your needs are, what your interests are? They're the answer to the question why. And it really is about going deeper into the why and what your why is. Why is a particular position or solution so important to you? Why does that solution that someone else is offering bother you or upset you? You know, those are all clues. You know, I talked earlier in the week about how emotions can be clues to what our needs or our interests or our values are. And so when there is something that doesn't work for you, something that you're finding upsetting, something that you're really railing against, you know, an idea that someone else has or a suggestion that someone makes, and you're like, you know, you feel it somewhere inside you that like, no way, that's not going to work for me. We always know, I think there's a resonance somewhere inside us that tells us when something's going to work or not going to work. And sometimes that resonance is louder than other times. But that's really, that's somewhere inside of us telling us that our needs are not going to be met with that particular solution. But what we need to learn is, so how do you go and find out what those needs or those values, those what I call interests are? And it's the key skill of collaboration, the key skill of conflict resolution. It's what I consider to be the magic, I guess, the thing that really shifts us in a conflict, or shifts other people, or shifts sort of the whole situation. And when you know what your values are, as Roy suggests, when you know what your interests are, it makes it easier to make decisions, because the question then becomes not who's going to win or should I do this or that. The question becomes, what solution is going to help me best meet my needs? And when you know what those needs are, you know, the solution becomes a little more obvious. Or becomes expanded, right? Because there's more than one way to meet that need or meet that interest or meet those values, right? So this is the why. The how becomes a little more fluid when you know that why, and that's what makes it so powerful and so useful. So I say, yay, Roy, I'm with you. I totally agree. And thanks for that quote, man. So, wow, it's a whole week. I'm into a whole week, day 7 of 26 days of live Facebook posts. So I appreciate people joining me and all the hundreds of people that have been watching. It's really exciting. I hope that it's useful and it's helping you think about things maybe in a little bit of a different way. I've mentioned a couple of times that I have one of the key learnings that I have is the one that I just talked about around interests. Another of the key learnings that I've had over my 20 years as a mediator is that piece that I talked about yesterday around when trust breaks down, we make negative assumptions about people's intent, and that can spiral to this place where it breaks down or ends relationships. And I have a free training guide on my website, collaborationschool.com, if you want to go download that. You just send me your email and I shall email it to you. And also, if you're interested in the course that I have coming up at the end of the month, there's information in the description to this live. And I think I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. There is usually funding available depending on who you work with. Lots of employers will pay for this training. And if you do not work for an employer that will pay for the training, let's say you work for a private company, there's funding that's available, partial funding anyway, from different sources. So shoot me a note and I'll let you know where you can find that. And there's one sector in PEI that, as of now anyway, doesn't appear to have the same access to training funding that others do, and that's the third sector, the nonprofit sector. And if you happen to be working in that sector, I will match that innovation 50% funding, and you just shoot me a note and I'll send you a code for 50% off the training. So thanks for watching, and happy day after election.